Welcome back. In this episode, we're going to be looking into one of the deepest rabbit holes on the internet, the missing 411. For those of you who are unaware, the missing 411 refers to a series of unsolved disappearances of people in North American national parks and forests, compiled together and documented by author David Paulides. The cases often involve unexplainable circumstances, such as hikers disappearing without a single trace, children being found miles and miles away from their last known locations, sometimes alive, and sometimes only their remains. Many theories have been formulated as a result, which range from natural causes, serial killers, and even paranormal events. If you find content like this interesting, make sure to subscribe and consider becoming a member to unlock channel exclusive perks. Let's dive in. Our first case is that of Dennis Martin, the 6-year-old boy who disappeared in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park in 1969. Dennis had brown hair and was wearing a red t-shirt tucked into his green hiking pants. Despite the most extensive search in the park's history, Dennis was never found, leaving behind a trail of unanswered questions. Dennis was born on June 20th of 1962 and lived with his family in Knoxville, Tennessee. And on Father's Day weekend in 1969, Dennis, his father, grandfather, and older brother went on a camping trip to the Great Smoky Mountains National Park. The group hiked to Spence Field, using the Russell Field Trail, which is about a 5-mile or 2-hour-long hike, with plans to spend the night there and get some rest. There, they met other families that were also camping in the area, and the adults decided to let all the kids play together while they set up camp. It was June 14th. Dennis and some children from the other families decided to surprise the adults by hiding and then jumping out at them. Dennis's father last saw him going behind a bush to hide, but when all the other children returned to the campsite about 5 minutes later, Dennis's father yelled, "I can't find Dennis," and everybody began searching for him. The search eventually expanded, involving National Park Service rangers. The area where Dennis disappeared features steep slopes, ravines, and is home to wild animals like bears, snakes, and bobcats. With the help of search dogs, Dennis's scent was able to be tracked to Eagle Creek, but upon reaching the creek, the scent trail went cold. The search group, however, did find a pair of footprints in the creek bed, one with a shoe and one without. According to the park ranger reports, the sole print matched that of the shoes Dennis was wearing at the time, but Dennis's father stated that the shoe prints were too big to be Dennis's. This has not been stated in any other report of law enforcement or the search teams. It was later concluded that these prints must have been from one of the Boy Scouts that were in the area, but upon later inspection, every one of them had all their shoes accounted for, and the Boy Scouts used the buddy system when out in the woods, so there would have been another pair of prints with the original ones. Complicating matters, heavy rainfall began shortly after Dennis went missing, washing out trails and causing streams to flood. On that night, temperatures also dropped to nearly 50 degrees Fahrenheit or 10 degrees Celsius. Despite the involvement of around 1,400 searchers, no trace of Dennis was ever found. The search was officially closed on September 14th of 1969, but still remains the largest search in the history of the park. There are 3 main theories about Dennis's disappearance. 1, that he became lost and fell victim to the harsh environment. 2, he was attacked by a wild predator and carried off. And 3, he was abducted and taken out of the park by someone. Unfortunately, to this day, Dennis's disappearance remains a mystery, with no concrete answers or evidence.
Local people, local news.
This is the 6th night an Idaho Falls family is spending without their 2-year-old son. Search and rescue teams still working to find Dior Coons Jr. somewhere in the Salmon Chalice National Forest.
Local News 8's Chelsea Brentzel joins us in the studio now. Chelsea, you reported this past Sunday that the search was suspended, but it maybe it's not really suspended.
Dior Coons Jr. was just 2 years old when he went missing on July 10th of 2015 at Timber Creek Campground in Lamy County, Idaho. He had blonde hair, brown eyes, and was last seen wearing a camo jacket and blue pajama pants. Dior was on a trip with his parents, Vernal Dior Coons and Jessica Mitchell, his great-grandfather Robert Walton, and Walton's friend Isaac. Vernal and Jessica decided to walk to a creek near their campsite, and Dior initially wanted to join them, but soon changed his mind and turned around to go back to the campsite where Robert Walton was. Jessica saw Dior walking back down the path to his grandfather before she turned around to continue walking to the creek. When Vernal returned to the campsite to fetch Dior and show him the fish in the creek, One claimed that he never saw Dior. Here you can hear the 911 call Jessica made on that day.
Phone call no parent ever wants to make.
What's the address of your emergency?
I'm actually camping in Ledworth, just outside of Ledworth.
Uh-huh.
My 2-year-old son, we can't find him.
You can hear Jessica Mitchell's voice trembling.
How long has he been missing?
About
An hour?
yeah.
The last place family says they saw Dior Koontz Jr. was a campground 10 miles west of Ledworth after being put on hold.
Jessica?
Yeah.
Okay. What is he wearing?
He was wearing cowboy boots, a blue, pajama pants, and a camel jacket.
The dispatcher asks for a description of the toddler.
How tall is he? Hello?
Yes, I'm not exactly sure how. He's about.
Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. Is your husband calling too?
Like all down where we were camping at, and we can't find him at all.
Then dispatch gives the mother instructions.
Okay, we need you to stay within cell service. We've got people going on the way.
Thank you.
Realizing Dior was missing, the family initiated a frantic search. Authorities organized search parties that lasted 2 weeks, but found no sign of Dior. Over the years, searches continued with ATVs, helicopters, horses, K9 units, and drones. But Dior remains missing. The family members present during the disappearance were interviewed multiple times, and in January of 2016, the Lamy County Sheriff's Office named Vernal and Jessica as suspects in the case. Private investigator Philip Klein, who was initially hired by the family, also concluded that the parents must be responsible due to their inconsistent stories and refusal to go to the media.
Not fired, he just said, I'm not going to signature on this contract any longer. We said, great, fine.
Klein was the second private investigator that worked with the family. You're about to hear from the first, Frank Vilt. He quit the case by sending the family this letter.
And I said, I am withdrawing from the investigation. My stipulation was both of you would be absolute truthful. In my professional opinion, both of you lied and misrepresented the true facts that could possibly solve the mystery of your missing son. Sooner or later, the truth will come out. We have Jessica giving up custody of her other 2 kids from her former marriage, and I believe the mother made an arrangement to give her child up for adoption.
Jessica wrote about this in a Facebook message. She told us her ex-husband could financially provide her other children a better life when she wasn't working. And she says she sees the children often. Jessica says, I would have never in a million years given Dior up for adoption. Still, both sets of private investigators believe Jessica knows more than she's letting on.
In the first 3 months since Dior went missing, his parents only made one media appearance, to which some family members and investigators found unsettling and suspicious. Dior's parents did participate in the 2017 Missing 411 documentary, though seemingly reluctantly at first, explaining that they avoided the media because their story would be twisted against them, regardless of what they said. While this explanation is plausible, one would expect the parents of a missing child to use every available resource to find them. But despite the ongoing investigation and speculation, no arrests have been made, and no one has been charged with a crime related to Dior's disappearance. The National Center of Missing and Exploited Children continues to release age-progressed photos of Dior, hoping for a breakthrough in the case.
The thing that I ever thought was maybe she knew something about Bob, was worried about Bob, spending what life he's got left in prison. And that was even better.
I just talked to my mom about, okay, is there something that you're worried about with Grandpa specifically, or what? She just said, I just don't know this guy, Isaac.
So I don't know what happened.
That's all there is to it. You don't want to get things stirred up too much, you know, so you find out what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
You know that.
My mind tells me, at first my mind told me, at that time, this killed my son, this had something to do with it.
I don't care. If it's my grandpa, that's guilty. I don't care. Like, I just want my son to.
This story takes place in April of 1952. 2-year-old Keith Parkins went missing from his family's ranch in Oregon. He was last seen playing outside with his siblings, and he was wearing blue sweatpants with a blue and brown patterned sweater and blue and white sneakers. When his mother called them inside to eat, everybody returned except for Keith, and according to his brothers, Keith went around the barn separately from the rest of them, and when his mother went to go check, there was no trace of him. A search was immediately launched, involving hundreds of volunteers, law enforcement officials, and military personnel. This search, like many of the others, was made more challenging due to harsh weather conditions, including snow. Luckily, however, Keith was found alive 19 hours later, about 12 miles from where he originally disappeared. He was discovered lying semi-conscious in a state close to death in a frozen creek bed. To reach the location where he was found, he would have had to travel through difficult terrain, including crossing 2 fence lines, a feat seemingly impossible for a 2-year-old. Keith had also mentioned being scratched by a cat, but it's unclear whether it was a domestic cat or a feline predator like a mountain lion or bobcat. Keith did make an appearance in the 2017 documentary, but to this day still has no recollection of the events. Considering his young age and the harsh conditions, his survival and distance he traveled remain a mystery. Survivorman Les Stroud attempted to complete the trek Keith would have had to have traveled, but even Les had a difficult time navigating through the terrain. Keith was one of the very few lucky people to ever survive and personally be able to tell their story.
As it was, his clothing was found ripped, and they figure it's likely from barbed wire fences, either going through them or under them. Can't see Keith going anywhere. I can't go anywhere. How a 2-year-old could travel the topography I'm traveling now, little shoes, and it was sub-freezing temperatures. Even if he was a kid full of energy. He's found here, face down in the snow, hat and coat beside him. Searcher finds him. Father, maybe 200 yards away, runs over, picks him up, and he's alive.
"38-year-old hunter Aaron Joseph Hedges was last heard from on September 7th of 2014 when he became separated from his 2 friends during a hunting trip in the Crazy Mountains, Montana. Aaron radioed to his friends to inform them that he had missed a turnoff back at their camp and planned to seek shelter near the Sunlight Lake area. This was the last time his friends ever heard from him. Aaron's wife, Christine, reported him missing on September 10th after receiving a call from his hunting buddies. The delay in reporting Aaron's disappearance raised suspicion amongst the community, and search efforts were unfortunately hampered by extreme weather conditions, including 2 feet of snow and dropping temperatures. Despite the discovery of Aaron's bag in Sweetgrass County in the summer of 2015, the case remains open. The community has considered various theories, ranging from Aaron getting lost and succumbing to hypothermia, to ideas involving UFOs, or Aaron fleeing to Mexico. However, the investigation remains open, with law enforcement officials unable to draw any firm conclusions. At least that's how David Paulides wrote about it in his book. You see, David left out the fact that Aaron was a recovering alcoholic and often had thoughts of not wanting to be alive anymore. It was reported that the sheriffs told David that in Aaron's bag there was an empty bottle of prescription medication, leading investigators to believe that Aaron took the medication and passed away hidden in the woods so that nobody would find him. This fact could have affected the narrative of David's book series, prompting him to leave out this key information. The action caused David to lose some credibility, and people began to notice other inconsistencies with his reporting on other cases. Despite this, however, Aaron's disappearance is still unfortunate, and we do not yet have an official cause. In the fall of 2006, 8-year-old Samuel S. Belkey also known as Sammy, disappeared at Crater Lake National Park in Oregon. Sammy was visiting Crater Lake with his father, and he was wearing a long-sleeve black and green striped shirt, cargo pants, red suede shoes, and a blue winter coat. He had mild autism, and some speculate this may have played a role in his disappearance. Sammy and his father were hiking on the Cleetwood Cove Trail when Sammy spotted something near a slope. A passing bicyclist claimed they saw Sammy gearing up to throw a rock and warned him that the slope was steep. But when his father caught up to Sammy ran off in the opposite direction, away from his father, seemingly playing a game of chase. Before his father knew it, Sammy had disappeared over the top of the slope, leaving no indication as to where he could have gone. Immediately, a massive search effort was launched, involving more than 200 people and covering an area of roughly 6 square miles. Despite the use of search dogs, helicopters, and heat-sensing cameras, no trace of Sammy was ever found. Search efforts persisted intermittently, even after heavy snowfalls in the area the next day, but to no avail. One potential explanation of Sammy's disappearance is that he got lost in the dense forest and succumbed to the elements. The subalpine climate of Crater Lake, with its cold temperatures and heavy snowfall, could have made it difficult for the 8-year-old Sammy to survive, especially given his lack of wilderness survival training. Another theory is that Sammy might have encountered a wild animal, such as a bear or a mountain lion, which could have attacked him, but no signs of an encounter were ever found during the search efforts. Sammy's disappearance remains unsolved, unfortunately adding another victim to the list of missing persons cases. The case ultimately led to the creation of the National Database for Missing Persons, to aid future search and rescue groups in their efforts to locate other missing individuals. But just like with many other cases, we have little to no information to go off of, adding to the mystery of what's going on in the national parks and forests. Derek Engebretson disappeared on December 5th of 1998 while searching for a Christmas tree with his father and grandfather in Winnemah National Forest near Rocky Point, Oregon. He was 8 years old. The three of them traveled to Pelican Butte in search of a Christmas tree, and once they got there, Derek wandered away from the group at some point, and his father and grandfather soon realized that they had lost sight of him. Despite their efforts, they were unable to locate Derek and had a passing motorist contact emergency services. A search effort was launched, involving law enforcement, search dogs, Civil Air Patrol planes, and Air Force Reserve helicopters. Derek's family and the local community also participated in the search, but the searchers only found small footprints in the snow and a snow angel near the road, presumably left by Derek. Additionally, a crude shelter made of fur bows was discovered, but search dogs failed to detect Derek's scent there. The snowstorm complicated the search efforts, and the official search was suspended 8 days later. However, Derek's family and volunteers continued their search, despite the harsh weather. There was a witness who claimed to have seen an unidentified man struggling with a young boy in the area on the day that Derek disappeared. However, the witness dismissed the event to a father-son interaction. Another report involved an unidentified man driving a two-door Honda, asking for directions in the forest that day. In September of 1999, graffiti was discovered in the bathroom of a Sayhagen rest area, about 300 miles south of Portland, which seemed to be a reference to Derek's disappearance. Derek's parents visited the site, but the contents of the graffiti were never made public. It was revealed in 2008 that Frank James Milligan, who was already serving a jail sentence for a heinous crime against another 10-year-old boy, was considered a potential suspect by police, but no concrete evidence was provided to support this claim. A 2018 article states that the family is still holding out hope that their son will return, but as of right now it's 2023, and Derek's whereabouts remain unknown. August 20th of 2004. 12-year-old Garrett Bardsley disappeared without a trace during a camping trip with his father and a group of Boy Scouts in the Uinta Mountains in Utah. He was described as Caucasian, with light brown hair and hazel eyes. At the time he went missing, his hair was shoulder length, he had a little gap between his two front teeth, and a birthmark on his right forearm. He was wearing a black hooded sweatshirt, reversible Nike sweatpants, a white t-shirt, Nike ankle socks, and white Converse sneakers with black or navy stars on the sides. Garrett and his father Kevin woke up early in the morning of August 20th to go fishing at Cumberland Lake. When Garrett's shoes, pants, and socks became wet, he asked his father if he could return to their campsite, located just about 250 feet away, to change his clothes. Kevin agreed, and he watched Garrett as he walked around the lake, shouting directions to ensure that his son knew which path to take. However, when Garrett didn't return within 20 minutes, Kevin went back to the campsite, only to find out that his son was missing, and no one in their Boy Scout group had seen him. More than 200 volunteers and search rescue teams from various counties joined the search efforts for Garrett, but the only piece of evidence found was one of Garrett's socks, discovered half a mile away from where he disappeared, in a granite boulder field. The search for Garrett covered a 3-mile radius in the rugged mountains and lasted about 9 days. After the official search ended, Garrett's family and volunteers continued to search for him until October, with further searches conducted after the winter of 2004, but no clues of Garrett's whereabouts were ever discovered. One of the patterns with this missing 411 phenomenon is how quickly some of the victims just vanish. 1 second they're there, and before anybody notices, they're gone. Not a single trace left or clue indicating as to where they could have gone. With many of the victims being so young, it could be that they just innocently wander off, only to look up and realize that they don't know where they're at. Or that young naivety could mean that they're a lot easier to take advantage of. The last case we're going to look into for now is the case of Bobby Bishop, who disappeared on August 15th of 1958 at the Rocky Mountains National Park. He was 10 years old. Bobby vanished while attending summer camp at St. Malo Retreat, a camp organized by the Catholic Church in the area. Bobby was mostly deaf and had difficulty speaking. He loved fishing and was doing so at Cabin Creek on the evening of his disappearance. The story goes that as Bobby was fishing, a camp counselor walked up to him and tapped him on the shoulder to inform him that it was time to head back. Bobby acknowledged the counselor and picked up his things, and the two of them started walking back towards the camp. Despite being just a few feet behind the counselor during the walk, Bobby suddenly vanished right before they reached the campsite. The search for Bobby lasted about 2 weeks and involved an estimated 300 people who scoured over 16 square miles of land. Bloodhounds, airmen from Denver Lowry Air Force Base, and divers were all part of the search effort. The only clue found was Bobby's bait box, located about a mile from the creek where he was last seen. Some people claim to have seen him in Estes Park, 15 miles north of St. Malo's, but those sightings cannot be confirmed. Almost a year later, 3 of the counselors who were present in searching for Bobby when he disappeared took it upon themselves to search for him one more time. The 3 of them eventually searched the boulder field around 2,000 feet up from the camp, and there, they found a hearing aid and bits of clothing. The counselors had also found Bobby's remains in an area that had been searched at least 3 times the previous year. This is where the story gets a bit weird. See, when Bobby's remains were found, there wasn't any clear statement about his skull being there. Eventually, a Denver area man named Dr. Tom McCloskey would turn over a human skull, which he claimed was given to him by his father, who was a prominent member of the Catholic Church and a good friend of the priest running the summer camp at the time.
It's rare when new evidence comes forward in a case decades after the fact, but it's exactly what's happening in the 1958 disappearance of a boy from a Catholic summer camp in Boulder County. 9 Wants to Know uncovered the mystery of the disappearance of Bobby Bishop, who vanished from Camp St. Malo. At the time, authorities suggested that he simply got lost in the woods and died in the elements. Some of his remains were found on Mount Meeker the year after he disappeared, but our 9 Wants to Know team's investigation raised numerous troubling questions, most notably the fact that 3 of the counselors at the camp went on to sexually abuse children as priests. The report jump-started a federal investigation into the boy's mysterious disappearance. His parents are gone, but one of Bobby's cousins still hopes.
Good morning, Natasha. This is a strange case, and it's gotten stranger. 9 Wants to Know recently confirmed that federal investigators have obtained earlier this year what they believe to be Bobby Bishop's skull. It was not discovered back in 1959 when some of his other remains were found on Mount Meeker. It was found at some later time, and it's been in possession of a Denver man for decades who did not know exactly whose it was or even why he had it. It's been turned over to federal investigators now, and they're considering it in part of their investigation.
Yeah, that's a major development.
It's reported that DNA testing is underway to see if this is in fact Bobby, but this prompted people to look deeper into the lives of the counselors and priests working at the camp when he disappeared. It turns out that 3 of the priests who were working at the camp were later charged with SA against children, all in their own separate circumstances, one of which having over 70 victims on his own. It's also reported that after the counselors found Bobby's remains, they waited 3 whole days before contacting the police. Why they would wait so long, and why a Catholic priest would keep the skull of a dead child is beyond my comprehension. but it sparked the theory that the original story the counselor gave about Bobby following him back could have all been fabricated, and the counselor instead could have had more to do with Bobby's disappearance than we were originally made to believe. It's likely that Bobby wandered off and got lost. And being deaf, if Bobby was nearby, it could have been hard for him to hear people calling him during the search. Unfortunately though, until we get the DNA results back from his alleged skull, we still have no answer.
Let me ask you about one other thing and then I'll get out of your hair. When I was first looking into all this, I was looking through, old newspaper articles and stuff like that, and I came across stories about a boy named Bobby Bizup that disappeared up at St. Malo.
Yeah.
And it sounded like you were helped with the search on that, and
Well, I was a counselor up there at that time.
Yeah. What do you remember about that?
What do I remember?
Yeah.
What I remember was, he was, I was running, I guess you'd call it the snack bar at the time at St. Paul, and he came and he wanted to buy candy, and I thought, he was getting too much candy type of thing, and I said, no, I don't think we ought to. And so he took off and just walked up the hill, I guess. And
is he the one that disappeared?
yeah, he disappeared, and I did not do anything to him except to not give him more candy is what it amounted to. And we I spent the whole evening with a couple of other guys trying to find him, and we didn't find him. And then it ended up with some guy came in with a dog to try to find him, and didn't find him, and if I remember right, we never did find him till the next summer, way up high.
Yeah, that's right.
And I recognized his shirt is what it amounts to. I didn't see anything else but that, and the shirt was torn. So probably some animal.
Did he die?
Some animal.
Yeah.
Some animal died, and then we had a whole bunch of kids. We'd gone up to the mountains, so I told one of the other counselors about it, and he looked around, and I took the kids back down to the camp, and that's about all.
So at the time, there were all these stories that he was out fishing, and they told him to come in for dinner, and he didn't come in. Is that not exactly what happened?
They couldn't find him for supper.
Yeah, I know that.
And
But you said it was after he wanted candy?
Yeah. That was about a couple of hours before supper time. It wasn't anything. I don't think there was anything wrong with it.
While each case is unique in its circumstances, there are common threads that bind them together, such as the suddenness of the disappearances, the extensive and often fruitless searches, and the lack of concrete evidence pointing to a specific cause or perpetrator. These similarities beg the question, are these cases merely coincidental, or is there something more at play? On the r/missing 411 sub, there is a picture that provides a possible explanation. In this picture, the user compares the extensive cave systems in the US, as well as the locations of the missing 411 cases. And when you compare them both side by side, they look eerily similar, indicating that these caves may have something to do with the constant disappearances, yet again providing another potential clue, while also raising even more questions. David Paulides, the author of the Missing 411 series, has undoubtedly brought these cases to the forefront of the public eye, raising awareness and sparking discussions about the unexplained disappearances in our national parks and forests. However, we have to consider the possibility that certain aspects of these cases may have been exaggerated to garner more attention. The vast majority of these cases have little to no information to go off of, and taking a deeper look, we can observe that some details might have been emphasized to create a sense of mystery, while others have been left out to avoid contradicting the overall narrative of the series. David has received backlash for this, as seen with the Aaron Hedges case, with claims that David has taken advantage of the victims' families' griefs and their stories for personal gain. It is possible that some of these disappearances may be connected, either through common cause or a pattern of behavior, but each case is unique and should be treated as such. In some instances, the most plausible explanation just might be a tragic accident, but in the end, the most crucial aspect is not whether or not these cases are part of a larger pattern or simply coincidental, but the fact that each one represents a human life lost and a family left with unanswered questions and unimaginable grief. With that being said, I'll leave it to you to form your own opinions and theories. Are these cases connected somehow? Or are these all a series of unique and unfortunate events? Let me know what you think down in the comments. And if you'd like me to take a deeper dive into some of these cases, let me know. Leave a like if you made it this far. And as always, thanks for watching.